going to show you how to make a coil basket. So to begin a basket like this, you need to start with something that goes inside of whatever material you're wrapping with. In this case, I'm using yarn as my wrapping material. You could use other things besides yarn. You could take an old t-shirt and you could cut it into like strips, and that could work. You could use other types of string. It's up to you. Inside, I chose to use just plain old plastic bags. If you're like me, you probably have some of these around the house. Even though I try to use the reusable grocery bags, I always end up with some of these anyway, and they will end up eventually in a landfill. So it's nice to have a way that you can turn this into something that's a usable item. And I will go through quite a few of these to make a basket like this. So when I use this as a filling material or as my core, I usually like to twist it so that I've got like a tight, relatively uniform shape. Now, you can also buy a cord that's meant to go inside a basket like this, or you could use other things like a thick rope or other types of cord that you might have around the house. But this is the one I'm gonna use today, and it's nice because it is free. So let me show you how you can get this started. You'll need a pair of scissors. You'll need a needle that has an eye that's wide enough to accommodate whatever material you're using, like this yarn. And you'll need some plastic bags. I've been taking the plastic bags and kind of grabbing them by one corner and then forcing the air out of it and twisting it. What this does is it makes this end tapered, and that helps when it's time to add another bag, so that I can overlap the end of this bag with the end of the next bag and have a relatively smooth transition where the two thinner bits of the bag get combined together, and then it's about the same thickness as the rest of the bag. Let's get started with this. I twist it up. And it's not gonna stay twisted, so I'm just gonna twist the beginning of it. I'm gonna take a little bit of yarn. I like to get about, I don't know, 2 yards of the yarn, but I'm just sort of guessing right now. So that I have something to work with that's long enough to give me something to do, but it's not so short that I'm gonna run out right away, and it's not so long that it becomes tangled. Thread your needle. You're not really gonna need the needle right away, and that's the end of the yarn I do not wanna work with at first. I need to start with this end of the yarn. I take the end of the plastic bag, and I'm gonna put a small tail of this yarn right here, and I'm gonna end up trapping this. I don't actually have to tie any knots. I'm gonna hold on to that yarn with my hand, and I'm gonna start wrapping this around like that. And I'm gonna wrap this direction, covering the plastic bag and working my way back towards the long part of the bag. It's okay to leave this first little bit unwrapped because I'm gonna trap that later, and I'm gonna get that taken care of. So as I wrap this, I wanna maintain some tension on the yarn so that it's relatively tight. And I'm trapping this loose end so that it's staying put. I tell my students, you gotta wrap it to trap it. So let's keep going. Once you've wrapped, I don't know, maybe an inch, inch and a half, you can start to roll it into a spiral. And what I'm going to do here is pinch this in half so that my uncovered area matches up with this other uncovered area. And then I'm gonna wrap both of them together really nice and tightly so that it is stuck together in a tiny loop. I think it kind of looks like a little teardrop. Now I can start to roll it into a spiral. You don't have to do a spiral. You could do something that's more of a oval shape and spiraling like in a more oval way. You can do different shapes, but I'm gonna just go with a regular spiral. Now at this time I have to secure this to the side of the spiral. So when I pull it in like this, it'll stay. I'm gonna take this yarn and I'm going to use the needle to go down through what happens to be the center of my spiral. And then I'm just gonna pull that tight. Now, the way I did this, I made the yarn kind of go around this like a S. I don't know if you can see that, but this yarn is crossing from the back of this one to the front of that one. And when I begin wrapping again, I want to cross over the other way. So what I'm basically doing is a figure 8 with my string. You can tell you're doing it right if you look at the side and you see a very small X right in that area. So that little figure 8 stitch is going to be repeated many, many times throughout this project so that I can continue to secure my new wrapped area to the previous areas. Now, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll count how many wraps I did, and then I will secure it with a stitch every 10 wraps or every 15 wraps or something. I did not count, so I'll just try to guess. I think I have about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 wraps. Let's do 10 wraps. 10 wraps, and then secure it to the previous layer. It's important that you think about securing it to the previous layer rather than just securing it to the center, because eventually your spiral's gonna grow and you don't want to keep securing your stuff to the center. You just want to secure it to the most recent row of your wrapping. Okay, that's about 10 wraps. Roll it and secure it. Right now, I need to get another piece of yarn. Don't wait until you have a tiny piece of yarn left. You'll want to get a new piece of yarn when there's, I don't know, 5 or 6, 7 inches left of your yarn. It's just going to be easier if you have more yarn to work with. So I removed my needle from the yarn. I'm going to get another piece of yarn. You could be the same color or you can change colors. Go ahead and thread one side and then find the other end. Now basically what I want to do is I want to take this end and I want to trap it inside with the core. So I'm going to place it on top of this core and just hold it there with my non-dominant hand. And then I'm going to continue wrapping with what is left of my string. I want to wrap it to trap it. So sometimes it helps to put a little bit of an overlap with the string so you can really catch it. You want to wrap it a good 5 or 6 times so that it's secure, and then you can take the last little bit of that tail and you're going to switch. This long piece that is the new piece is going to become the wrapping piece, and this piece is going to lay down with the core, and it's going to become the wrapped. So I switch to the long one. Before I do that, I can either, like to deal with this tiny tail I've left here, I can either pull this to make the tail go away, or I could trim it. Now the first couple of wraps, you don't want to pull too hard, because if you haven't trapped it for very long, you might have a problem pulling the string all the way out. So once I get a couple of wraps, I can start putting a little more pressure on there. And now I can go ahead and roll this over here, secure this to the previous layer. Whoops. So like, that's where I'm going to secure it, where my needle is right now. And I'm good to go. I've got this whole long piece of string. You do it the same way, whether you're using the same color or different. And there I did my little figure 8 stitch, and I'm ready to keep on going. So at this time I'm ready to add another color. I am going to add some pink. Instead of the same color, I'm trying something different so you can see what that looks like. So just like I showed you with the other one, you want to thread one side, set that down, grab the other side of the string or the other end of the string, and it becomes part of the core. Wrap it to trap it, just like this. And then switch which one is the core and which one is the wrapping one. This time I'm just going to trim this little tail off. And now I'm ready to secure this to the most recent layer right here. I put this needle in, and you'll be able to see with the color of the string the stitch that is securing it. It'll look like that. Now, if you're consistently counting how many wraps you do between your securing stitches, you can get a really consistent pattern of like wrapping for 10 wraps and then there's a little stitch of pink. If you don't like that stitch of pink showing, you can hide a long piece of this blue in the core. Like keep a long piece in the core, not just the short one, where every time you wrap it with the pink, the extra blue is hidden. But then when it comes time to stitch it to the previous layer and secure it, you take the needle off of the pink and you put it on the blue and you use the blue to stitch it over. And then you put it back in the core again. I'll show you how to do that right now. Let's pretend I did not do this pink stitch. Now this would work better if I had a longer piece of this blue. So don't try this if the blue is this short, but I'll just show you the difference between what I had done with that pink stitch and what I'm gonna do with this blue stitch. I'll put the needle on, roll up my spiral, make my securing stitch, and then switch this back over, take the needle off and put it in the core. Although I suppose you could leave the needle on if it's a long piece, because you're just gonna continually use that blue piece. Now if I keep wrapping, you'll notice the blue is right there holding my piece to the previous layer, so it doesn't show here, but I can continue going on and on and on with the pink. And in that way, if you want to not have that stitch show for a design reason, you can do that. You can really control what colors are going to go where. Now let's talk about some designs you can do by changing the shape. So in this one, I started the middle just like this first one that I just showed us how to do. I started out the exact same way. And when I got a few layers out from the spiral, I decided to change and do this kind of squiggly line design. And basically, I hadn't really seen many tutorials that did this, so I was kind of experimenting and I wasn't sure how it was gonna go. But when I got to this part of my coil, instead of continuing to go around, I wrapped a rather long piece until I could bend it back and secure it here. And I didn't do the neatest job at securing it because I hadn't done this before, but you can see there's a securing stitch right there. And then I let the S curve kind of go back towards where the spiral was. I secured it here and I secured it again here with a stitch. So there's fewer stitches happening in this S curve, but it's enough to secure it here, here, and here. And then I began that same process again and again. Once I had done an entire row of that shape, I came back to this spot. You can tell where I started and stopped it because of the way it comes off of the spiral here. and then it becomes the spiral again up here. Like this, just continue to the next main row. There's other shapes you could make. You could wrap a long piece and tie it into a knot, make it look like a little pretzel or something, and like have a little pretzel knot layer. What I'm trying to do up here is sort of like a zigzag, and I'm not sure if I like it or not, but the idea is I wrapped a rather long section and then scrunched it up and forced it to make a little bump. I secured it a certain distance away to maintain that bump shape. So the bumps are not super consistent. It's been hard to do. And when I come back around and I get to the beginning, I'm going to just go back to the top of this like a normal spiral, like these rows. And that will help keep the shape that I want. So let's do a little time lapse and go to this is how this looks. I did about 30 wraps without securing it. And then I'm gonna sort of bunch this up into a little hill like that. And I'm going to secure it to this previous row. It helps too to notice, like, if there was a securing stitch right here, think about whether you're putting this stitch before it or after it, because that can make a difference. And there is a little stitch like right there, so I'm gonna make sure I get in before it. So that'll keep my next little stitch that I'm making from being too, like, able to loosen. It'll keep it tighter, because if I pull on this, it doesn't want to go past this point. You can't really see the stitch there because I've used the same color, but it'll help. Okay, another thing that I need to do is get another plastic bag and graft it on. So let me show you how that would work. So I'm just gonna overlap what was my handles of this previous bag to one of the corners of a new bag and just sort of twist them together and kind of get them to graft together. And I'll have to hold on to it and make sure it stays together with my hand. I guess it is kind of nice to use the two colors because you can see how I've twisted it here. But I'm gonna hold on to those so they stay together. And once I've wrapped around them, they're gonna stay put. Okay, now I've gone all the way around this, doing these little bumps. And I have to go around the next time, and this is really gonna be what helps make the shape, whether I want it to flare out like the lip of a bowl, or whether I want these to go straight up and make this a taller basket, which is what I'm going for. So the key for that is gonna be, basically I'm gonna be making another one of these normal coils, but I am gonna have to be like forcing these layers upward like that as I do it, and then attaching the peaks of each of these little hills to my coil at the desired spot. We'll see how it goes. That's about where I want to secure it to kind of force that zigzag to stay in place. All right, it's time for me to get a new string, and we're gonna speed it up and see how the rest of this row goes. So here's a look at the basket so far. Adding this top layer to help this zigzag stay in place. kind of worked. I'm not sure I'm super happy with it. I had some spaces where my zigzag was kind of big and then others where it was a little smaller. It was hard to like measure it out and get it consistent. And the shape of it, it's going into more of a bowl shape, which is what I wanted. I'm gonna do a few more regular layers of just normal coil, kind of like we've got here in the middle, so that the top has a nice big area that's solid. Between this zigzag design and this S-curve design, honestly, I think I like the look of the S-curve better, and it wasn't that much more trouble. Like, honestly, it was a little more intricate, but it wasn't that hard to do, and it's a little more sturdy. I think the multiple stitches to keep things in place was good. So if I had to do this over again, I think I would do more of this and not do this, but who knows? This was only my first attempt. Maybe I would change my mind if I figured out a more consistent way to do it. All right, I'm gonna add another plastic bag and continue on and do a few more rows of regular coil. And then at the very end, we're gonna put a handle on it. So I've pretty much done as much of this basket as I want to do. I want to add a handle now. So I've been thinking about the design I want for the handle and thinking about how thick this cord is and if just one pass of the cord will be enough to be a handle. And I feel like I want two thicknesses of cord to make it really strong. So I'm thinking about the shape of the basket, something like that, and just having one handle that goes across like this. But I wanted to have two strands of this handle, and so it'll be doubly strong. And I also, like, if you looked at this from the side, instead of having the handle just come straight up, I want the handle to come together and there'll be two pieces like this. So two pieces of yarn that kind of come together, or not, rather than yarn, like the actual cord, so that it will be a little more stable, and I don't think it'll swing as much if I have this kind of design where there's a bit of a broader base. So that's what I'm going to try to do. I'm not exactly sure how it's going to go. Anyway, let's see how this turns out. I thought I should slow this down and show you how I made the handle itself. So very similarly to how we did the coil throughout, I wrapped the plastic bag core a certain number of times, like 10 times. And then when it was time to make that securing stitch, all I really had to do was just loop the string under the other side of the handle like that and cross over. And I didn't really need a needle for that because I could maneuver my hand in and out of the handle. And I just continued doing that throughout the length of the handle, and that did the job. Here's a look at the finished product. And my plan is to use this basket to collect our eggs from our chickens, and here's one of our little baby chicks hanging out in the basket to show it off. Thanks for watching this tutorial, and I hope it was helpful to you.